Eleanor Maitland stepped out of her dusty Corolla carrying a modest pecan pie and a linen napkin older than most memories. Charleston's autumn air was sweet with maple and wood smoke, the kind that held onto your coat longer than it should. The Mecklin home, with its whitewashed pillars and wrought iron gates, looked like it had been plucked from a postcard. Lights twinkled along the porch rails. Inside voices bubbled like cider on the stove. Eleanor adjusted her cardigan and crossed the gravel path, heels crunching softly. She glanced up at the gabled windows where flickers of chandelier light escaped between sheer curtains. The house still smelled the same in her memory, rosemary, lemon wax, and something like nostalgia spoiled at the edges. A valet in a crisp vest approached. "Ms. Eleanor Mecklin," she replied. "I'm family," he nodded politely and opened the car door, his eyes flicking past the pie and napkin without comment. She thanked him with a small smile and continued up the steps. The entryway was filled with warmth and gold light, a buffet of voices overlapping. Jeanette's laugh was the first thing she heard, perfectly modulated, the kind practiced in charity luncheons and PTA fundraisers. Tom's baritone followed, magnetic and easy. People leaned toward him when he spoke. Eleanor made her way to the check-in table where a young woman with a tablet and name tag sat behind a garlanded wreath of magnolia leaves. "Name the girl," chirped Eleanor Mecklin. The girl frowned, tapping quickly, then paused. "You're not listed as individual. You're under the Mecklin family block, as a guest." Eleanor blinked once. "Sorry." The tablet was turned toward her, names lined up neatly in serif font. Tom Mecklin, Jeanette Mecklin, Russell Mecklin, even Tom's college roommate Jason, below them in smaller type. "Guest of family." Eleanor forced a thin smile. "I guess I'm the lucky +1. I can handwrite your tag if it's fine." She pinned the generic name tag to her cardigan just above the embroidered collar. It tugged slightly at the fabric. Inside, the dining hall glowed with effort. Silverware gleamed under soft chandeliers. The table settings were precise, napkins folded into crisp swans. At her seat, tucked near the kitchen door, the swan had collapsed inward, limp and hunched like it had given up. Eleanor smoothed the napkin anyway, hands brushing over the rough linen. Not one of hers. Hers were tighter, firmer, folded with care. This one looked tired. She sat quietly as guests passed by, few stopping to greet her. Some nodded vaguely, others smiled politely and moved on. Jeanette flitted from table to table, kissing cheeks, adjusting centerpieces. Tom stood near the head table in a navy blazer, the picture of effortless grace. His hand rested on the small of Maddie's back like punctuation. The scent of baked ham and candied yams swirled through the air. Eleanor's stomach tensed, not from hunger, but from something old and brittle. She poured herself a glass of water and tried not to look at the head table too often. At the center of it all was Russell sipping bourbon from a cut crystal tumbler. His gaze passed over Eleanor once. No smile, just a tilt of the chin as if acknowledging that a chair was filled. Dinner came and went in courses. Dishes passed, laughter crescendoed and ebbed. When the servers began clearing plates, Jeanette stood with perfect posture and tapped her spoon to her glass. "Before dessert," she began, "we'd like to invite someone very dear to us to say a few words." Eleanor looked up puzzled. Jeanette smiled her direction. "Our daughter, Eleanor." The room turned. Forks paused. Cameras lifted. Eleanor's breath caught. She hadn't prepared anything. No one had warned her. She rose slowly, walking toward the microphone in shoes that suddenly felt too tight. The mic stand was slightly too low. She adjusted it, fingers trembling just a bit. The room waited. She looked out across a sea of polite anticipation. "It's good to be home," she started softly. voice even. This house, it holds so many echoes. My brother's laugh, the sound of Mom's heels in the hallway, Dad's whistle when he pruned the magnolias, some smiles, some murmurs. She continued, and I brought something small tonight, a pie. And this, she lifted the napkin from her hand, was folded by my grandmother for our first Thanksgiving in this house. She taught me how. She said, even if your place is small, make it yours. Jeanette laughed. The interruption was light but deliberate. Oh, Ellie, she said with saccharine sweetness. You always did love symbolism. Wouldn't it be lovely? She turned to the crowd if Eleanor gifted her condo in Austin to Tom and Maddie. As a symbol of love, the room didn't gasp. Not quite, but it shifted like something structural had cracked, too small to hear, but deep enough to feel. Russell chuckled low and confident. Come now, sweetheart. You don't even use the guest room. Someone snapped a photo. A glass clinked. Eleanor blinked once, then twice. She stared at Jeanette, at the practiced warmth in her eyes, at the careful script they'd rehearsed, all of them without her. Eleanor, jaw tight, replied into the mic. This wasn't agreed on. The room shifts. Silence settles. The day after Thanksgiving, Eleanor brewed her coffee in silence, the kind that settles like a final decision. Steam curled softly above the ceramic mug as she stood by the window in her East Charleston condo, wrapped in a wool cardigan and still wearing yesterday's makeup. Outside, the world kept moving. Neighbors walking dogs, the mail truck rumbling down the street. But inside, time moved differently, slower, like it had stopped and was waiting for her to catch up. The linen napkin from last night still sat folded on the dining table, a quiet witness to what was taken. She hadn't planned to keep it not consciously. It had found its way into her coat pocket somewhere between the front porch and the valet. Now it rested beside the morning mail, a pile of grocery circulars, a half-folded electricity bill, and a glossy postcard from a neighborhood insurance agent smiling too wide. She sipped the bitter coffee, no cream, no sugar, and stared at nothing. A knock at the door broke the hush. Not sharp, just two soft raps and a pause. Ruby. She stood on the porch holding a cloth-covered basket. Her coat was buttoned all the way up and a silk scarf was tied under her chin, the way Eleanor's grandmother used to wear hers. Thought I'd bring you something warm, Ruby said, stepping inside without waiting. These are banana muffins. Still hot if you don't dawdle. Thanks, Eleanor said. She didn't smile, but her shoulders softened. Ruby set the basket on the counter and glanced around. You sleeping okay? Eleanor hesitated. Enough! Ruby didn't press. She just opened a cupboard like she'd done it 100 times before and found 2 small plates. Eleanor reached for the mail out of habit, flipping quickly until something sharp slid between her ribs. A slim white envelope from Cornerstone Realty. She froze, her name printed cleanly across the front. She tore it open. Inside was a folded note confirming a 2:00 p.m. walk-through appointment at her condo as requested. Her hands trembled. She hadn't requested anything. The phone rang before she could process the words. She snatched it up. Hello. Hi, Ms. Mecklin. The voice was chirpy, professional. This is Melissa from Cornerstone Realty, just confirming you'll be present for the showing this afternoon. There's been a mistake, Eleanor said slowly. Oh. Pages rustled in the background. It's scheduled under your name. A. Mr. Russell Macklin is listed as co-signer. The title information came from our verified records. Eleanor's mouth was dry. I didn't authorize any of this. I see. Would you like me to cancel the appointment? Yes. Immediately. Ruby stood still watching her. She didn't ask what the call was about. Eleanor put the phone down and walked to her room. She opened her handbag, dumped it on the bed, and rummaged through receipts, lip balm keys until the realization hit like a missed step on a dark stair. The spare condo key she always kept in the side pocket was gone. Her breath shortened. Her father had mistakenly taken her bag a week ago after dinner in Westlake. He'd passed it back to her with a casual shrug, her hands clenched. Ruby appeared at the door holding the napkin in both hands like it was made of glass. "This yours?" she asked gently. Eleanor nodded. Ruby didn't say more. She left the napkin folded and placed it back on the table. "I'll leave the muffins on the warmer. Don't let them dry out." She closed the door softly behind her. An hour later, Eleanor parked outside a small red brick office building with ivy curling up one wall. She stepped inside, heart steady despite the chill in her limbs. Avery Gaines greeted her in a navy turtleneck and gray slacks, her expression calm and unsurprised. "Thought you might call," Avery said. "Want tea?" "No, just show me the documents." They sat in the back office, a space that smelled of eucalyptus and old paper. Avery laid out the records one by one, property titles, closing documents, signature logs. "This is your condo," she said, tapping the sheet. "And this," she flipped the folder, "is the house your parents live in, purchased under your name. You never transferred ownership." Eleanor stared. "That was foreclosure rescue. I didn't think. They never followed through on a transfer." "They've been living there on your legal deed." The room was very still. Avery didn't look triumphant. "Just ready." Eleanor's voice was even. "File the eviction. It's not anger. It's clarity." Avery nodded once. "Consider it done. Back at home." Eleanor sat on the couch, the napkin once again in her lap. The banana muffins had cooled. She didn't reach for one. Her laptop blinked open. Dozens of tabs glared back at her news recipes, half-read blog posts. A new email chimed. From Jeanette Macklin. Subject: "Let's talk. Come by. Just us. Let's talk." No one expected the sheriff to show up before breakfast, least of all the ones who thought they owned the place. Frost rimmed the wrought iron fence like powdered sugar, softening its sharp lines in the early light. The street was hushed, the kind of hush that belonged to holidays and slow Saturdays, a pause before life resumed. A cardinal hopped between branches of the live oak near the driveway, unaware that this morning would become something whispered about over backyard fences and church potlucks for months to come. The sheriff's car pulled up without sirens or flash. Its engine murmured low, steady. The deputy stepped out with the rhythm of someone used to awkward errands and uncomfortable silences. He held an envelope sealed with a gold sticker. Eleanor sat in her parked car across the street, hands resting on the steering wheel. She hadn't brought coffee, hadn't eaten. The silence suited her. Clean, deliberate, inside her coat pocket, her fingers rubbed the edge of the folded linen napkin. She wasn't sure why she'd brought it. The front door opened with its usual resistant groan. Jeanette emerged in a pale blue robe, teacup in hand, steam curling from it like breath. Her expression didn't falter at first. Years of composure training held fast. Then she saw the envelope. Russell appeared behind her in slippers and a pressed shirt. He squinted at the deputy, one hand still on the doorframe like he wasn't fully awake. The deputy removed his hat. "Mr. and Mrs. Macklin." "Yes," Russell said, voice gruff but uncertain. "I have a court-ordered notice of eviction. This property is no longer legally occupied by you." Jeanette blinked. Her cup tilted, tea spilled in a quiet arc splattering the porch steps. She didn't notice. "That's impossible," Russell barked. "This is our house. It's not in your name. the deputy said plainly. "You were notified through counsel. This is final." Tom appeared behind them, barefoot, pulling on a sweatshirt. "Mom." His voice was small. "What's going on?" Russell turned to Eleanor's car, then eyes narrowing as if waking fully. "You did this?" Tom followed his gaze, his mouth opened-closed. "You're overreacting," he called Eleanor. "You're making this worse." Eleanor didn't move. She stepped out of the car only when the deputy retreated to his cruiser. Her boots clicked softly on the pavement. The air smelled of wet grass and burnt leaves. She didn't look at Russell, didn't glance at Jeanette. She walked past the gate without pausing. No words. Jeanette's mouth moved, but whatever she said was lost to the breeze. Eleanor continued down the sidewalk, not hurried, not triumphant, just forward. Across the street, Ruby stood by her front garden, one hand resting lightly on the fence. She didn't wave, didn't smile, but as Eleanor passed, she reached out and gently laid her hand on Eleanor's arm. The warmth startled her. "They'll say you imagined it," Ruby said softly. "But I was there. I saw what they did." Eleanor, blinking hard, nodded once. They stood like that for a moment, two women wrapped in coats and silence under the slow tilt of morning light. Somewhere behind them, the sheriff's car pulled away. No one clapped. No one cheered. And yet something shifted. That evening, Eleanor didn't turn on the lights. The condo was dim quiet, full of shadows that no longer frightened her. She sat at the dining table, her laptop open in front of her. The cursor blinked. She moved her mouse slowly, then double-clicked a folder she hadn't opened in months. Its name glowed softly on the screen, Proof. They tried to rewrite the story, but Eleanor had the original copy. The sky had been gray since morning. A dull slate stretched above Charleston like someone had forgotten to pull back the curtain of cloud. Inside her condo, the lights stayed off. The only glow came from her laptop screen, casting a cold white sheen across her face and the dining table where the linen napkins still sat folded and unmoved. She hadn't meant to open the link. It found her. Sent by a colleague, she barely remembered the message. Read, "Thought you should see this. Sorry if it's out of line." Beneath it, a video shaky footage of Thanksgiving night. The same moment she'd tried to forget. The video opened with Jeanette's laugh, bright and practiced. Then came Eleanor's voice, only part of it. Just the stammer, the pause, the awkward intake of breath after Jeanette suggested she give up her condo. Not the full context, not the ambush, not the quiet swallowing of dignity. The caption underneath read, "We raised her with love. We never expected betrayal." Tags followed. Family. First. Ungrateful. Daughter. Some people never change. The comments came fast. She looks like she rehearsed that. Wouldn't give her brother a place to live. Cold. Some kids are never satisfied. Eleanor sat still. Her hands, though folded, were clenched. Not in rage, just recognition. They were writing her out again this time, not from photos, but from narrative. The doorbell rang. She blinked once, twice, then rose. Ruby stood on the porch with a jar of peach jam wrapped in a kitchen towel. "You look like you need something sweet," she said. Eleanor didn't speak but stepped aside. Ruby entered her presence soft as always. "You saw it?" Ruby asked. Eleanor nodded. Ruby placed the jar on the counter and looked around. "Want me to stay?" "No," Eleanor said. "But thank you." Ruby touched her shoulder briefly. "You let me know." When the door closed again, Eleanor turned back to the laptop. The cursor blinked where it had been frozen for hours. She opened a folder on her desktop, then another. then the Dropbox app. She dragged files in without hesitation. A screenshot of the bank transfer, $75,000 to Tom's startup account in 2018. The scanned deed to the Charleston house, her name alone on the purchase date, 2010. An email from Jeanette dated 2 years ago. Could you just cover this month's mortgage? You know we'd do the same for you. A voicemail. Jeanette's voice tight but sweet. Don't tell your father I asked, but we're falling behind. That condo of yours has always been a blessing. She zipped the folder, named it If You Care to Know, and uploaded it to Dropbox. Then she shared the link with no caption, no plea, no defense. She posted it quietly to her page, changed her settings to public, and logged off. She didn't check the comments, didn't watch the view. Count rise. She went to the kitchen, boiled water, and poured a cup of tea. The silence wasn't empty. It hummed with intention. An hour later, her phone buzzed, a message from her cousin Lila. I had no idea. I'm sorry. Eleanor exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Then another message popped up, Maddie. They've done worse. I have proof. Eleanor stared at the screen. 3 dots appeared. Typing. A photo came through, grainy but unmistakable, a page from the Macklin family photo album. Every photo of Eleanor. Graduations, summer vacations, childhood birthdays had been replaced or removed. She wasn't blurred. She was absent. They left behind boxes, dust, and one folded napkin they never meant for her to find. The front door creaked open more easily than Eleanor remembered. The lock had been changed, but the hinges still sighed the same old complaint. She stepped inside slowly, the soles of her boots tapping against hardwood faded by decades of sun. The house was empty now. No rugs, no laughter, no furniture polished with lemon oil and pride. The rooms had a hollowness that echoed more than sound. It echoed absence. Morning light filtered through the sheer curtains, landing on the hardwood like a memory caught mid-exhale. Dust floated in it, delicate and aimless. The realtor had already come and gone, leaving a checklist on the kitchen island and a half-drunk bottle of water on the counter. Eleanor didn't read the form. She didn't need to. She walked through the space without touching anything, eyes catching where frames once hung, outlines still visible on the wallpaper. Nail holes remained like tiny puncture wounds in the walls. In the dining room, faint scuff marks curved around where the old table used to sit, the one her father claimed was too heavy to bother with during the move. The house held the shape of people no longer there. She stepped into the kitchen. A note rested on the counter. No envelope. Just a sheet of printer paper folded, once flattened now by the realtor's clipboard. This was never your home anyway. No signature. She didn't flinch. She didn't even sigh. She turned away and opened the lower cabinet near the sink. Not out of hope, just habit. Her grandmother used to keep extra dish towels there. The door stuck slightly, then gave. Inside, wedged between an old phone book and a cracked measuring cup, sat a shoebox, unlabeled plain. She pulled it out and set it on the counter. Its cardboard was soft at the edges, the tape yellowing. She lifted the lid. Inside was a photo, creased the corners curled from time and handling. Eleanor was no older than 8 in it, front teeth missing, hair in crooked pigtails, holding a science fair trophy, nearly half her height. Her smile was wide, unguarded. Behind her, a chalkboard with the words, "Volcano Experiment First Place." She stared at it for a long moment. Beneath the photo was something else. She recognized it immediately. A linen napkin folded into a swan. Her swan. Not an imitation, not one of her grandmother's, hers, the one she had folded nervously on the night of Tom's birthday dinner. She'd left it on the table, sure it would be tossed or forgotten. It hadn't been. She didn't ask what it meant that someone had kept it. Maybe guilt, maybe routine, maybe nothing. She closed the box, held it to her chest just once, then tucked it under her arm. Her phone buzzed. Maddie. They didn't just erase you. They replaced you. No embellishment. No explanation. Just truth. Eleanor read it twice, then pocketed the phone. She walked the rest of the house quickly now, through the den where family movies once played, past the linen closet where extra blankets were always folded in thirds, to the hallway where her height had been marked in pencil, until one day it stopped. The pencil marks were gone now, painted over. She didn't need them. Back at the condo, she kicked off her shoes, set the shoebox gently on the dining table, and went to the mail pile she'd been ignoring all week. In the center was an envelope, not a bill, not junk. The handwriting was careful, slanted. She opened it. Inside, a form from the Charleston Community Board. At the bottom, 5 signatures: Ruby, Mrs. Coley from next door, her cousin Marvin, Pastor Rickman, and Maddie, all endorsing Eleanor Maitland for local community leadership. No explanation, just their names. She didn't reclaim a family, she built something stronger belonging. The condo smelled of cinnamon and slow-cooked ham, the kind of scent that lingered in your sleeves and clung to the folds of curtains. A single candle flickered near the window, its flame steady despite the draft seeping in from the sill. Outside Charleston's December evening had pulled its quilt of quiet over the city. Cars moved slower. Lights burned warmer, and the sidewalks emptied early. Eleanor moved through her kitchen with practiced rhythm. A glass baking dish cradled the ham, its apple glaze pooling along the edges. Cornbread cooled beside it, golden and cracked at the top. The spiced tea simmered in a ceramic pot that had belonged to her grandmother, faint chips along the rim softened by time. Ruby leaned against the entryway, her cardigan buttoned unevenly, holding a small poinsettia wrapped in brown paper. "Needs a little color in here," she said, crossing to the window. She set the plant down beside the candle and adjusted the angle as if that alone might brighten the room. Eleanor smiled. "It's perfect." They worked together in quiet companionship, setting plates, folding napkins, not swans, just squares, and laying out a dish of cranberry sauce shaped like the can it came from. When Eleanor opened the drawer for serving spoons, she paused. Inside, tucked carefully among the utensils, was the frame she had picked up earlier that week. She lifted it gently. Inside the frame, the linen napkin no longer folded but smoothed flat, and the photo from the science fair, her small self beaming beneath a paper volcano. She placed the frame in the center of the table, not for decoration, for meaning. They ate slowly as if the food itself told stories. Ruby spoke about her late husband's laugh and how he used to dance badly to Motown in the kitchen. Eleanor shared how her grandmother once tried to convince her that salt could fix burnt cookies. They both laughed, not loud but honest. Partway through the meal, Eleanor's phone buzzed. A message from Maddie. She opened it, thumb hovering over the screen. It was a baby shower invitation, cream-colored minimalist. At the bottom, in Maddie's neat handwriting, "You deserved better. I'm sorry." Eleanor didn't forward it, didn't reply. She simply folded the card and placed it in the drawer next to the napkin holder. After the dishes were rinsed and drying on a towel, she opened her laptop and made a donation to a women's shelter 3 blocks away. In the memo line, she typed, "In honor of second chances." She didn't need recognition. She needed release. Later. Ruby poured the last of the tea into 2 mismatched mugs and brought them to the living room. Eleanor followed, carrying a folded blanket she laid across their knees as they sat. The tree across the street had been wrapped in string lights earlier that day. Now it glowed in gentle pulses, blinking between red and gold. "I like it here," Ruby said. "It's quiet, but it's honest." Eleanor didn't answer. She just nodded. They sat in silence for a while, not the uncomfortable kind, but the kind that lets thoughts breathe. As they finished dinner, Ruby said, "We should host Christmas here next year, with real invitations." Eleanor smiles as candlelight danced gently across Eleanor's quiet kitchen. The weight of what was lost no longer outweighed what had been quietly reclaimed. In a world eager to erase those who don't fit. Its tidy frame, her resilience whispered that presence doesn't need permission. Kindness, even when given in silence and without witnesses, has a way of carving space where judgment once stood, like an old napkin folded with care. Our worth doesn't fade. It waits to be remembered. If this story reminded you of something quietly brave in your own life, perhaps it's time to honor it and maybe pass that warmth on to someone still waiting to be seen.